My name is Barb Nangle. I'm the founder of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, From Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. This is episode 2, Acceptance. I knew I needed to learn acceptance. I really didn't understand just how important the lack of acceptance was in my life. I had resentments. I wanted things to be different than they were, like traffic, my boss, politics, the educational system, the cap on the toothpaste tube. And I'd heard it all before. Emotional pain often comes from non-acceptance. Acceptance decreases suffering. Acceptance is a choice. It means we stop fighting against what is. And this one from 12-Step Rooms. Acceptance is the answer to my problem today. But my question was, how the fuck do I do it? How do I learn to accept things that I see as unacceptable? I've come a long way in that regard. In fact, this past fall, I took a 6-week solo road trip out west, which I never could have done pre-recovery because I was mired in fear. And I had a van for the first 2.5 weeks that saw 4 mechanics, and the owner put over $2,000 in repairs in. So the vacation I was planning on spending seeing national parks and beautiful sights and meeting cool people, instead, I was waiting around, troubleshooting, problem solving, on the phone, on the computer, arguing with the owner of the van about whose fault was what and who was responsible for what. And I managed. There were a couple of times where I got really upset, but for the most part, I was just like, hey, this is what's happening. And I was able to focus on the good things that were coming out of it. So how did I go from, oh my God, this toothpaste cap is ruining my life, to I have 2.5 weeks in a camper van that I don't really know anything about, and I'm with strangers in different parts of the country, and I'm okay? How did I get there? Well, it started with my first epiphany in recovery. I was driving in the car where I had actually been taking out all of my anger for many, many years, because I never told people that things bothered me. I never said, no, this isn't working for me, or I don't want to do that. And I had all this pent up anger, and I would take it all out in the car. And this one day I was driving, and the traffic was crawling. And the third time that I had to pump the brakes really hard, this thought came into my head, and it was this: I need to leave more space between cars. And I was like, oh my God, that's my program. That's my program. It's working. Oh my God, it's working. I'm the problem. It's me. I'm the problem. It's actually my thinking that is the problem. So it's not the fact that there's traffic on the highway, which, by the way, was built for traffic. So there should be traffic on the highway. It's my thinking that it's a problem that was the problem. And that epiphany had a cascade effect on so many other different areas of my life to help me really get, this is my thinking. So by the time I heard the phrase, acceptance is the answer to my problem today, I knew enough to listen to people in the rooms, because I've gotten a lot. I didn't really understand why it was true, and I didn't know how to do it. So here's the process I followed, which I made up, by the way, and then some additional thoughts on acceptance. The next time a situation came up and I was aware of the fact that I was so agitated was because I wasn't accepting what was happening, I started repeating the phrase in my head: acceptance is the answer to my problem today. Acceptance is the answer to my problem today. Acceptance is the answer to my problem today. And a calmness came over me, which was really news to me, because here I was in the exact same situation that I was moments ago, and I was calm. It was really clear it wasn't the situation that was getting me all agitated. It was me and my thinking. It was my thinking about the situation that was the problem. From there, I started telling myself in such situations, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. Sometimes I do that out loud. Sometimes I just do it in my head. But it helped me to get into the situation, because I normally, when I was agitated, was not really there. I was so focused on what I thought should be happening that I was not accepting the reality of the situation. So I was focusing on what I thought should be the reality of the situation, not what was actually happening. And interestingly enough, I was the kind of person who thought I didn't believe in any, quote, shoulds. So when people said things like, don't should on yourself, or don't believe in any shoulds, I didn't think they were talking to me. I didn't think that applied to me. The other day, I just read in a piece of 12-step literature that saying something over and over can clear up a channel choked up with fear, anger, frustration, or misunderstanding. And I think that's really what happened for me, was my channel was choked up with fear, anger, frustration, or misunderstanding. And I was able to clear it up by repeating the same thing over and over and over in my head. The world has not behaved as I thought it should. I had in my mind the way I thought things ought to go. Politics, traffic, coworkers, that stupid toothpaste cap. And now I understand that thinking is the problem. It's not the politics, it's not the traffic, it's not the coworkers, it's not the toothpaste cap. It's my thinking about those things. Acceptance is focusing my thinking into what is actually happening. It's being in the present moment. It's facing that this is what's happening. I've heard you cannot solve a problem by condemning it. So I was trying to condemn these problems as not the way things should be. Now I understand that it was my thinking that was the problem. And acceptance does not mean you have to like it. I don't have to like that there's traffic, but I do have to face the reality that there is traffic. I don't have to like the way the manufacturers of the toothpaste cap made it, but that's the cap I'm dealing with right now. If it's really that much of a problem for me, then I need to get another kind of toothpaste with a different kind of cap. Because I'm not going to let a stupid toothpaste cap steal my serenity. For me, acceptance meant stop resisting and stop avoiding. Be really present. I'd heard all these different sayings before. Don't take a snowstorm personally, put on boots. Or this Chinese proverb, better to put slippers on your feet than to carpet the world. And this new one I just heard the other day, you can pave the road or you can wear sandals. So what these mean to me is I could focus on the world around me and try to fix it or change it so I could pave the entire road, or I could put carpet all over the world because the world has jagged edges and is bumpy and lumpy and has cracks in it. Or rather than expend all that energy to try to fix the world around me, which I simply cannot do, I can fix me, or I can change me. So I can do something as simple as putting on boots in a snowstorm, putting on slippers, or putting on sandals. I'd heard before from someone in AA the expression living life on life's terms, and I really had no idea what that meant. I know the definitions of those words, and I get on a superficial level what those things mean. But I really didn't get it. And now I do. It means life's terms, like the world that has jagged edges, are what they are. And so I am going to live life on life's terms, not on Barb's terms. I'm going to have a lot more peace and serenity if I can accept life the way that it is. But if I resist the situation, and push against it, that's where all of my agitation and annoyance and anxiety come from. And I can't do anything about that. But if I can accept this is what's happening, I can be at peace and be present. The serenity prayer says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. But I think that's backwards. My experience is that serenity comes from acceptance, not the other way around. So I don't get serenity and then learn how to be accepting. What I do is I learn how to be accepting, and once I can do that, then I can get to serenity. There's a couple of areas in my life where acceptance has been particularly important. One has to do with emotional acceptance. We need to remember that emotions build on each other. And I'm the kind of person who has been kind of over the top with emotions. I'm a feeler, and I've had lots of big emotions. That was especially true before recovery. It's not so true right now. I'm a lot more even-keeled. My highs are not as high. My lows are not as low. And they're fewer and farther between. But when I was emoting on such a strong level, I might have, for example, worry come along. And because of my large emotions, I often had a lot of shame about my emotions, especially in my family where that was not really cool. So then I might get shame on top of being worried. And when you have those two emotions come along, they combine. And the way emotions work, it's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's more like 1 + 1 = 7. So I've got worry and I've got shame about that. And it's just this cascade of awfulness. But if I feel worried and then I accept that I'm worried, I'm left with only the feeling of worry. It's not exacerbated or made worse by any other additional emotion. So I can just be worried. And what I've learned is that emotions are energy. And as with all energy, they will eventually morph and change. This too shall pass. And it will pass much more quickly if I accept the initial emotion as it comes along, as opposed to fighting against it or being ashamed that this is what's happening. The second area where acceptance has been extremely important is in the realm of self-acceptance. So I mentioned earlier, you can't change something by condemning it. I'm never going to beat myself up into being a sane, rational, functional, mature person. It's simply not possible. Believe me, I tried it for decades. So I've come to accept I have whatever it is, these traits, these defects of characters, or that I did this certain thing, or that I said this certain thing. Instead of fighting against it, or instead of beating myself up, I accept it. This allows me to face reality and work toward the kind of life I want, which is one of peace and serenity. The end. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can get future episodes of my podcast.